First, Rush Limbaugh denied troops who questioned the war their status as real soldiers. Then yesterday, some Democrats in Congress stuck up for those troops and criticized Limbaugh. Tomorrow, in tonight's fourth story on the countdown, a new voice enters the debate, real soldiers. We'll preview the striking video in a minute, but first the background. Comedian Rush Limbaugh has stuck to the standard script for fringe extremists. Never apologize, attack anyone who criticizes you. This time, Limbaugh claims that Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, who went to the floor yesterday asking Limbaugh's boss to repudiate his comments, took those comments out of context. It is the standard claim, debunked easily enough by listening to it, something Limbaugh has denied his own listeners the ability to do when he later played an edited clip in his defense. We will play the unedited clip in a moment. When you hear it, keep in mind Limbaugh later claimed he was referring to one soldier, whom he did not mention until 2 minutes after the clip you will hear has ended. And the caller he speaks with specifically says prior to this clip that he called as a, quote, retort to the previous caller, an anti-war Republican military veteran. Keep in mind also that you will hear Limbaugh agree with a definition of real soldier, which confirms the obvious interpretation of the term phony soldier.
What is the imperative of pulling out? What's in it for the United States to pull out? I don't think they have an answer for that other than, well, he's going to bring the troops home. Save it. Keep the troops safe or whatever. It's not possible intellectually to follow these people.
No, it's not. And what's really funny is they never talk to real soldiers. They like to pull these soldiers to come up out of the blue and spout to the media.
The phony soldiers.
The phony soldiers. If you talk to a real soldier, they are proud to serve. They want to be over in Iraq. They understand their sacrifice, and they're willing to sacrifice for the country.
They joined to be in Iraq.
Real soldiers joined to be in Iraq. Tomorrow, a real soldier responds in this TV ad from the group VoteVets.org.
More and more troops and veterans of Iraq believe George Bush's military policy has been a disaster. I am one of them. Rush Limbaugh called vets like me phony soldiers for telling the truth about Iraq. Rush, the shrapnel I took to my head was real. My traumatic brain injury was real. And my belief that we are on the wrong course in Iraq is real. Until you have the guts to call me a phony soldier to my face, stop telling lies about my service.
Today, Limbaugh compared that soldier to a suicide bomber, claiming other people strapped lies to him and sent him out. In another example of Mr. Limbaugh's unceasing tone deafness about this country and its people, that soldier you just saw, his real injuries suffered in service to our country were caused by a real suicide bomber. Let's turn to a different radio voice, Rachel Maddow, whose program airs every weeknight on Air America Radio. Rachel, thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Whatever you feel about the war, denying soldiers their status as soldiers, and then condescending to one who almost died fighting the war you claim you're supporting, using as metaphor the literal thing that almost killed him. And this outrage seems to beggar description even when we're talking about an idiot as transparent as Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah, using the suicide bomber metaphor is almost unbelievable. I mean, Keith, I'm a talk radio host, and I know that in talk radio we absolutely traffic in outrage. Most shows will have something outrageous on them every single day. Tonight I spent a whole lot of time talking about the hooker-related filings in the Duke Cunningham bribery case, and I know that's outrageous. That's what talk radio is. But there's, I think, two things that make this different for Rush Limbaugh. One is the fact that he was part of the right-wing and Republican pile-on on MoveOn.org for their ad criticizing General Petraeus and his history of stretching the truth about Iraq. But the other part of this, secondly, is that MoveOn pile-on created an overt standard for congressional intervention or congressional condemnation for certain speech about soldiers. And Rush has just barreled headlong into that.
And the water carrier announcement from last November he has branded himself as what he is. We've also discussed this. This exchange in question was in response to a Republican caller who had said, I'm against the war. And just as Limbaugh denied that soldiers are real soldiers if they are against or even opposed to some of the policies regarding the war, he also said the caller couldn't possibly have been a Republican because he opposes the war. Do you understand any of the thinking that might be clouded in here, hidden in here, this obsession that denying that real soldiers, real Americans, real Republicans might have gee, real disagreements about this?
Well, it reminds me of one of the more recent Ann Coulter outbreaks that we had in the last couple of years. When her last book came out, you'll recall that she had said that she was very angry that 9/11 widows were among the people who were criticizing the Bush administration. And she wasn't angry because of the arguments that they were making. She was angry because of who they were, because it, at least momentarily, interrupted her strategy of fighting, and the strategy that I think a lot of right-wing commentators use, which is not to take on the argument, but instead to personally attack the people who are arguing against you. And so Ann Coulter, for a minute, felt like she couldn't attack the 9/11 widows, and then went on to attack them. And similarly with Rush Limbaugh and with other people, I think, who are on his side of the war question right now, it's a lot easier to attack people who want to bring the troops home as, you know, Frenchmen, commie, pinko, liberal, lesbians, or whatever they're going to call us, rather than actually make an overt pro-war case for keeping the occupation going forever.
Yeah, you can't share any of my opinions because that might mean my other opinions are as wrong as my opinion is on this one.
Yes.
Senator Reid called on Clear Channel, which distributes this program, the Limbaugh Show, to repudiate his remarks, and the Mays family, which runs Clear Channel, coincidence, good friends with the Bushes. Their CEO, Mark Mays, has answered tonight that in a letter to Reid that he would be offended if Limbaugh said what he said, but he accepts the denial. He also added, let me read this exactly from the letter. I cannot speak with authority as to whom exactly Mr. Limbaugh's comments were directed or what was his intent. Is there something in there? Is there a refusal on this man's part, on this corporate goon's part, to stand 100% next to Rush Limbaugh?
Well, I should say that I am in part distributed by Clear Channel as well. Most people in talk radio are at this point because they're such a huge part of the industry.
Right.
And Clear Channel has an IMUS calculation to make here, just like MSNBC did and just like CBS Radio did, which is Rush Limbaugh enough of an asset that his role as an asset for the company outweighs the embarrassment that he causes the company and the outrage that he causes people and potentially advertisers. Now, Wesley Clark and other people have been highlighting the fact that Rush is distributed on the Armed Forces Radio Network and asking Congress to yank him off that network. If that happens, that might go some distance toward changing the overall image of how advertisable Rush's show is.
And we might add, the Armed Forces version of the Limbaugh Show regarding the phony soldiers had only the edited clip on it, not the original one. They never heard the original one. And by the way, I didn't think asset was the word you were going to use there. And if you had used the other one, I would have sent you $100 in cash. Rachel Maddow of Air America, great thanks.
Thank you, Keith.
Iran and satire. If you can believe this, a Democratic candidate endorses a no nukes pledge. The Republicans attack him. Then it turns out the pledge was co-authored by two iconic Republicans. And